Okay, so I've decided to check whether salt water and fresh water, which one freezes better to make up ice packs for your esky. So I started with 2 bottles. One's just fresh out the tap. The other is fresh out the tap with a heap of pool salt in it, like more pool salt than it can absorb. I put it through with the bar mix, mixed it all in very thoroughly, and there's still a heap down the bottom of the bottle. So I've chucked them in the freezer, and later on in the experiment I've added one that pretty closely matches the salinity of salt water according to Google. That is 35 grams per litre. So I just mix that up with a mixing bowl and a set of scales, and here's the results. Okay, let's see if there's any difference already. Okay, fresh water 1.6, salt water 0. Things are cooled down faster. Okay, so these are the results after 3.5 hours. The fresh water has stalled right at 0 degrees, whereas the salt has continued to go down to -9. That is super weird. Turns out something weird going on in these bottles. This is 6 hours later. Whoa. Okay, so it's still at 0 degrees. That's the fresh water. Now the salt water's at -10.4. And that fresh water has almost completely frozen over. And you can see there's a bit of water in there. Yeah, there's still a bit of water. But yeah, so that's down to 0. Whereas the salt water, although it's -10, it's still completely liquid. I don't think that's going to freeze. I don't reckon my freeze is cold enough. Okay, so when I left the bottles last night, the incredibly saturated salt solution, which is as much salt as that water can possibly take, was at -10 degrees. The fresh water hadn't completely frozen yet, so that was still at 0 degrees. So I looked up how much salt is in the ocean, and it said basically 35 grams per litre. And so I put in 500 mils with 17.5 grams. I chucked another one in there, so there's 3 bottles in there. Let's check to see if any of them have frozen or any. Okay, so the super saturated salt solution has not frozen. The ice down there, that's all salt down the bottom there. That's all frozen. But this liquid is still as liquid as it was when it went in. This is the fresh water. That's completely frozen, with cracks in it. And this is the solution I made up to match salt, like the ocean water. That's also completely frozen. Rock hard there. So let's check. Alright, first up, the really salty salt water. -11. Then the fresh water. Wow. -12. How weird is that? -12. And the saltwater solutions -7. So it looks like if you leave salt water in there, like if you leave the salt and the fresh in there long enough, they'll both go to the same temp. So they were both sitting at -12 this morning. And I'm pretty sure that salt water that's supposed to match the ocean, by the time that's been in there for 18 hours, that'll probably get down to -12 as well. So is freezing salt water, I mean that salt water, the solution that I made, well, we'll see if that ocean water gets down to colder than the fresh water, but so, I don't know. The way that experiment turned out, I don't know now. We'll see. Alright, so it's been about 28 hours now, and let's see what we've got. Alright, super salt solution, minus 15. Freshwater, minus 15.1. The solution I made to match salt water in the ocean, minus 13. Alright, so that's been in there for maybe 8 hours less, or minus 14. Okay, so that's been in there probably 8 hours less than the fresh and the super salt. But the super salt will not freeze. Like, it's just way too salty to freeze. You can see that ice down the back there isn't actually ice. That's the salt that wouldn't dissolve when I ran it through the blender. Okay, of course the fresh water is rock solid. That's salty. I mean, sorry, fresh water has fully frozen, and so has the salt water, the one that matches the ocean. So in my freezer, under the conditions that I did it, really salty water doesn't freeze. Salt water that matches the ocean does freeze, and so does fresh water, obviously. But the temperature differences aren't that different. Once you leave them in the freezer long enough, those temps will all come together. Whereas frozen fresh water, that gets to 0 and sits on 0 for hours until every little speck of fresh water is gone. And once it's frozen, then it'll start to drop temp. But yeah, so I don't know about this saltwater bizzo being the best thing for chucking in your esky to keep things cold, but we'll see what happens when I do the tests on how long it takes them to hold their temps. All right.